Hello and welcome to this first look exploring session looking at the Banquet of Dainties for all such guests that love moderate diet. Printed in 1566. Yes, it's been a while since we did a first look that far back. It's the beginning of the reign of Queen Elizabeth, and oddly enough, it's also the pretty much the last original play, if we can call it a play. I don't know if it's a play or not. From the 16th century that we haven't done yet. We have still some translations to go. We still have some other sort of semi-theatrical documents to do. We've got some dialogues left to do. But this is the last thing where we can borderline say it's an original play, possibly, question mark, barring the one we can't get. So this is almost the end of an era. It's not. We've still got an absolute ton of stuff to read. But it's mostly from the 17th century onwards. Anyway, with all of these things, we're going to find out what's going on with this text, because I don't really know what's going on with this text. We have just finished doing a transcription from some very bad OCRing and some difficult, occasionally to read PDFs. So hopefully what we read will make sense and it will be fine. Thanks to Liza for putting the finishing touches as far as we have got so far on the text. Anyway, reading today, science, as well as also, I think you can be the author at the beginning. I didn't ascribe anyone to read the author, so yeah, you can read the authory bit as well. Reading those is...
I am an author. Well, no, I mean, I'm a poet, but anyway, I don't talk about that. I'm Eric. I am here. I'm a question mark.
So apparently Eric is a poet, but we don't talk about that. So nobody talk about poetry, Eric writing poetry. Nobody mention that ever again, okay? Make sure that never gets mentioned, that Eric writes poetry. Reading Sapience today is...
Liza Graham, not feeling very sapient in London.
Know the feeling. Reading Demosthenes is...
Hi, I'm Alexandra, and Eric writes poetry?
No, he doesn't. No, haven't heard anything about that at all, ever. And reading Sosia and Chastity is...
Hi, I'm Emma Kemp, and I'd like to read this poetry, Eric.
Yeah, but Eric hasn't written any poetry.
So, of course.
So
Yeah.
I
get it now.
Sadly, it's one of those great unknowns. Anyway, we're going to open the text with some authorial
Can I
introductory
just say
stuff.
I've read some of Eric's poetry, and it's really good.
Really?
Yeah.
But how? It doesn't exist. He doesn't write any.
When you have poetry X-ray vision, you can see through into the poetry dimension.
Of course, we're always forgetting that. Anyway, I don't know how long we'll sustain this running gag. I'm quite liking it. Anyway, Eric, if you could read the introductory material and see where it takes us.
Ye sacred nymphs whose steps do trace with flares to and fro, ye sisters fair whose princely grace to bathing founts do go, affect and aid the slender mind whose earnest will is bent by painful toil to him assign your fancy to content. Minerva's lamp, Dame Pallas clear, or Triton's touchstone true, exile from breast all childish fear, with wisdom me endue. To breathe and blast in thundering verse such dainties as be rare, or junkets fine such to rehearse as stewards few prepare. Conduct with pearl, adorned with stone, environed with gold, a blazing glass to look upon or pleasant to behold. Direct Thalia, quivering quills, Sicilides come nigh. Ye eternal sisters, if ye will, assist me to reply. Guide trembling joints, guide fancy free to show her simple skill, and Phoebus' chief help speedily my promise to fulfill. So shall I pass this toiling clog and finish your desire. So shall I escape the loathsome log and unto joys aspire. Come near, we yield to thy request, granted shall it be. I thank ye, dames, vouchsafe to pleasure me. I greet you all farewell a while. I thank you, everyone. This friendly banquet to compile myself I shall take upon.
And thus closes that opening gambit, which was not, I found, relatively opaque. I have to say, apart from sort of the closing thing of I present you my work. Here is the thing. But yeah, it's a very sing-songy sort of verse. It is. Yeah, I'm not sure. I'm not sure what that was doing. Thoughts on the room, Alexandra.
I gather from the beginning, Ye Sacred Nymphs, Ye Sisters Fair, that it's like an invocation to the Muses. Aid my slender mind because I'm about to try and do a thing. But it starts by calling them something that they're not, which is, yeah. I mean, it's not a great start, is what I'm saying. It's not a great start to go off addressing the people you want inspiring you and calling them the wrong name. And then he names one muse, I think, and a bunch of other divinities, and Apollo and Phoebus chief help speedily. So he gets to, or they get to the right divinity in the end. But yes, it's kind of not a great start is the way I would refer to it.
Does it feel performative or does it feel literary? I'm just wondering. Is it a prologue or is it a literary intro? Liza.
To me, it feels pleased with itself. It feels, there's some delight in the author's own wordplay. But I think when you invoke the muse, you're supposed to be humble and you're supposed to say, oh, I have no skill, please, muses, help me. Or you're supposed to highlight what you lack that the muse can give you. So, I don't know. We'll see how we go on and whether the muses will actually help the poor quivering author.
Well, let's. That seems to be something to find out. We now approach something we will call a scene. Demosthenes, the master of the banquet, and also in attendance, either in a minute or from the beginning, Sosia, his steward.
Friend Sosia, listen and attend what news I shall relate. To this my phase this audit tend, and mark thereof the state. I have decreed for to convive the muses, every one, with dainty meats, but first I'll thrive myself to thee alone. I, walking through the prate or green of Helicon that spring, these lanterns bright did view a queen, her mate a princely king, he decked with flamed shining beams or brightness of the sun, and from her eyes large silver streams supposed were to run. The queen the regal king did call, and termed him Phoebus bright, and after then ensued all the muses to my sight. Cyclades did foremost trace their robes as green as grass, and next Pierides took place, as clear as crystal glass. Cyclades their scutcheons bear upon their humours high, which wisdom seemed meant to declare, surmounting starry sky. Etherion globes or circuits round Pierides did hold, containing sciences profound, beset with glittering gold. These sights delighted much my mind, so that I greedy was with serious toil the place to find, through which their feet did pass. In dumps I tended to and fro, the summits were obscure, yet last I breasted for to go where fancy did procure, and fancy like did lead to accomplish her request, and brought me straight unto a bed, where I did seem to rest, so decked with pleasant odours sweet, pleasure for to smell, that sure I did suppose it meet a season there to dwell. Thus fancy yielding to delight, I fell in slumbering sleep. Waking, dames with torches bright my core did charely keep. The one a fading rose did bear, Dame Beauty, was her name, the other Fortune, as you hear, a blind and fickle dame. With it in trance my sprites were gassed, and torchlight did amaze my lively senses almost past that staring I did gaze, scarce breathing, breathless was my heart, and grief did so assail that sure I doubted pitching dart against me should avail. Then of a sudden beauty's rose was faded to the stalk, and Lady Fortune with her glows constrained was to walk, for on the wall fair written was that beauty is but vain, which adage, as it came to pass, made beauty to refrain. Then likewise in another place Dame Fortune was defined with nipping cuts for to deface her pomp and lofty mind. In sculped brief, if that the blind do seem to lead, the proverb true needs must I find, more fools are brought to bed. Thus, winding not from midst my thrall, wherein I chained was, into a princely court or hall by wandering, I did pass, the roof whereof was ivory bone, the pillars beaten gold, the windows decked with pearl and stone full costly to behold, in midst whereof a bath did spring, which did my heart inflame, so rather that than anything I would have taste the same. Thus still desire did press to prove the thing it would attain, and eke my greedy mind did move, were therein to take some pain, I fainted like a feeble hound, and coveted to drink, but yet the liquors did rebound, when lips were at the brink, like Tantalus I had despair, which lives in doleful pain, who, when the waters broach him fair, they ebb as fast again. Thus, gazing sometime here and there, in midst of all my grief, 3 nymphs of sudden did appear, which did me much relief.
My liege, if this be manifest, which you protest is true, I wonder much how you were blessed such wondrous sights to view. Spied you in midst of crystal stream 3 ladies passing glee.
Mm-hmm.
I doubt your worship did but dream effigies such to see.
If Titan's chariot chased the sky throughout Aurora's race, then this, as true, none can deny, I was in present place.
Then by request might boldness crave a pardon at your hand, with smiling face and countenance grave, their names to understand.
Relation maid, approach me nigh, I grant to thy request, and final thus I do reply, because I love thee best. Dame Sapience first, then chasted queen possessed the second reign, and Lady Science to be seen last period, very plain. Each offered me a precious gift, most wondrous to behold, but Science on my head did lift a crown of perfect gold. This done, such music did abound as gassed my senses all, so that incontinent to ground in trance my corpse did fall. Then at the latter pinch and ebb of this my mortal life, when sisters black had shred my web, I longed for a wife. The Muses, hearing this my moan, consented unto me that verdict given of every one, straight wedded should I be. Then who could like me should me have, and whom I liked again, this they decreed, to keep from grave the body nigh hand slain. These golden darlings marked me well with fixed eyes so rife, and pointed Science last to dwell with me for term of life. Content was pleased, she gave her troth. I coupled faith in hand, that while the air did feed us both, her husband I would stand. Then led we were in sacred wise into the temple sweet, where Vesta by her wonted guise did bathe our tender feet. Thus were we married. Know the case. And this take, by the way, my wedding banquet in this place I purpose here today. Therefore, such cates as costly be, I charge thee to prepare, and thus much more, attend to me, 3 dainty dishes rare.
Ah, fet, they say, and dearly bought, fine daintrils doth delight. Now every corner must be sought to please their appetite. I run, I trace, I fisk and jet, I range from street to street, to kill with hawk or catch with net such wildfowl as I meet. Trudge, Sosia, trudge, festine with speed, thy pillars do prepare. But Lixa, see the hounds ye feed, against we course the hare. I know not I, what cates to buy, for dainties common be, such diverse meats unfeignedly, as serveth each degree.
I pray thee zealously, my friend, search out the very best, for peerless dames I do intend shall be my pointed guest, both pheasant, plover, lark, and quail, with rabbit suckers young. Of dainties these let me not fail, with others rare among, as marchpane, cheese, and ginger green, with sucket pleasant sweet, blanched almonds, as in court is seen, for princely ladies' meat, stewed prunes, conserve of cherries red, pears, biscuits, sugar fine, with nectar dulce, since I am wed by voice of muses 9.
What junkets call ye these, I pray? No dainties can they seem, for vulgar sort from day to day, as common them esteem. They serve as food for to sustain the hungry corpse withal, so that the nymphs from them refrain, as we refrain from gall. For sacred powers of starry sky their natures do consist, having pleasure pleasantly, so hath them where they list. And sequence then, for to conclude, if they be souls above, what right their favours to delude with earthly cates would prove. Therefore endeavour to invent, by cunning art and skill, some dainty dish incontinence thy promise to fulfil. For naught availeth to provide great things of small effect. Stay, stop therefore, pause and abide, this zealous zeal reject.
Thy judgment soundeth to the ear with reason firm indeed, and therefore greedy more to hear, I prithee to proceed.
Where foolish judgment rooteth deep, and fondness beareth fruit, their witless will is brought asleep by fancy's feeble suit. And then the proverb's proof is found, thus doth Minervum teach. Therefore, with bended knee to ground, grant pardon, learned leech. For what I would I cannot say, and what I can I may not. Therefore, without longer delay, proceed with speed and stay not.
Why, license frank is granted free. Let pardon thee suffice. Set dread apart, and show to me the sprigs of thy device.
Where ignorance doth lead the route and guide the ensign free, there oftentimes it comes about that bloody fields we see. And therefore, as you pardon grant, so pardon I request. He is unwise that seems to vaunt, on that he knoweth least. For wisdom's law to take in hand, for cooks it is unfit. And wise men, as you understand, will know before they knit.
Scripture in a way. Then trotting need constrains to weigh. Then trotting need constrains to weigh, a salve with posting speed. Hark, Sosia, mark this present day, I prithee, to proceed unto my place, consisting still, mention for to arraign, whereby I may complete my will, and bring about the same. And I shall to the temple hie, the muses to implore, to aid my racked fantasy, that then I might adore.
Thy servant's will is ready bent to grant to thy desire. Behold, progresses do relent, and homeward I retire.
Adieu, farewell, farewell, adieu. Valedo Sosia me, adieu. Adieu, my friend so true, thy business do a plea.
Farewell! In this though I be blind, yet I may draw my bow, in such a sort to please thy mind, and kill the crafty crow.
Exit Sosia. Okay, so it's an interesting thing. I have to say it's right. So I was off. I mean, it just feels like it's high. I've had a fever dream and I've invited it back for dinner. It's just so random, and I do quite like that Sosia just sort of goes. Can I just check the details of what we're talking about here? Are you sure this happened, sir? Okay, well, with your imaginary friends, I don't think I'm going to cook lots and lots of food because it's not going to be. I mean, I don't know how much of that is humouring. It feels to me just very much like, oh, all of your imaginary friends, I'm not going to spend a week in the kitchen cooking for them. Come up with something else. I know that's probably not what is actually going on there, but that's just what was going on in my head. I liked it. Don't spoil my dreams. Sorry, Liza.
I'm only going to spoil your dreams a little bit.
Yay.
I do like that Sosia provides a sort of reality check. And when Demosthenes lists all the delicious foods that he wants, Sosia is like, those aren't dainties. Everyone eats those. And Sosia also makes the philosophical point, which Demosthenes hasn't grasped yet. Sosia makes the philosophical point that these are heavenly beings and they are not going to be refreshed by earthly, physical food. They will. They need something more dainty than that. But what dainties? What?
Yeah, I mean, what do you feed some? The personification of science and chastity and etc. I mean, what do you feed these people? I mean, it's a good question. I mean, it is true. Demosthenes hasn't made that imaginative leap. He's just going, well, I'll just put out a lovely spread. It's just, even though he's the one. There's so many details on that. It's just sort of really weird. It came across. It feels like a dream because it's just in the midst thereof a bath did spring, and it's just like it just turned the corner, and then there was a bath, and then this thing, and then I got married. I thought, what? To science.
Yeah, there's a whole undercurrent here. I mean, when we see the word bath, we think of something to bathe in, but it seems here to refer to a spring, something you would drink out of.
It seems something bigger than just a bathtub. It seems something much more involved. Yeah.
Yeah. But while we're talking about food, I mean, we should glance at the title, which is A Banquet of Dainties for All Such Guests That Love Moderate Diet. And there is, of course, an implicit contradiction there, because if you're of moderate diet, then you don't eat dainties. You eat, moderate and wholesome things.
Well, you're going to have a proper meal. You're not going to snack in between meals, are you?
Well, snacks are serving multiple courses of fancy things was a luxury thing, but that's not exactly of moderate diet either.
No.
So it'll be really interesting to see what goes on. We've now got the central problem, which is what dainties are we going to serve?
Yeah, and Sosia has to some degree just sort of just gone off and gone, well, you're on your own, mate. I did like the farewell as well, of just, bye.
I might kill a crow. I mean, a crow isn't a dainty. Are they going to eat a crow? I don't know. Are they going to make a crow out of marzipan and eat that?
Maybe a killer crow for luck, I don't know. Eric, were you waving?
Yes, no animals are harmed in the making of this video, I hope. Yeah, I don't know, just that list of foods, it makes me think like it's meant to make you drool, sort of. It's just that endless list of, marchpanes, cheese, ginger green, and all that stuff. And I was just wondering what the nectar was, because obviously, like, what is he gonna go and look for, like, actual nectar? Does he mean wine? Or is that just like sort of something really, really, like, I don't know, something else?
Yeah, it's a good question. Do not know the answer. We don't have to come up with all the answers now. But again, I don't know what the occasion for this this piece is, or if it has an occasion. It's what is it?
Was it? It might have been a wedding banquet or something.
Yeah, I mean, it's not inherently too far from some of the stuff we found in interludes over the last 100 years or so, but there's nothing that quite matches this in my memory. Anyway, I can't think of anything that quite. Certainly this dream logic that we're sort of going through. It's not quite Alice in Wonderland. Alexandra, then Eric.
I think there's either a chance for Sosia to be a very good counselor in just looking at their lines. There's a lot of hang on, stop, think about this. And there's also, I think it sets us up, it's in Sosia's lines that we are set up for, okay, so the plan is endeavor to invent some dainty dish to fulfill this promise that you made, which leads Demosthenes to be like, yes, I should really do that. You do all the work. But I love so it's either sort of good counselors, Sosia, or it's somebody, I think, or you could do that in a modern interpretation, he just kind of snarkily not undercutting, I don't know what the word is, just being, being there with the cutting remarks that just don't get picked up by the person they are referring to, but they do by the audience. There's some wonderful what I would I cannot say, and what I can I may not. There's some wonderful lines, and there were a couple of other places where, Sosia seems to be hinting at ignorance being in the lead. And given that the only leader we've met so far is Demosthenes in this relationship,
Yeah, there definitely seems to be. I mean, it's that question of how high up the chain of power is Demosthenes. Is it supposed to be just a reasonably wealthy gentleman, or is it the king or something? Because that changes how Sosia interacts. Because it's a case of, look, I don't want to say anything too bad because you might hurt me, in a meaningful way. It's how much of that is I there's things I'd like to say, but I can't. But unless you let me and make sure you've written a document saying that you won't hurt me afterwards, kind of thing. Eric.
I was going to say there is a text that is quite similar to this, but we haven't read it as a group. We've read it with Greg and Helen, and unfortunately it wasn't recorded. It was A Christmas Mess, which is basically like a sort of it's
we
a fight
that,
between.
We did record it.
But we did.
Yeah,
okay,
it's on the YouTube channel and anything. Go and watch it, people. Go and watch it.
I totally forgot that we were...
I wasn't there. It's absolutely true. It was a last-minute addition to the schedule.
Yes.
But, in fact,
you can watch it then on our YouTube.
Anyway, sorry, go on with your point.
Well, basically, there's a fight between beef and pork, and they're fighting for who's going to be first. And it's that kind of surreal element of comedy. It's a lot of fun, and some of it rhymes. I think I can't remember. And yeah, this is the kind of level that that reminded me of.
Okay, well, we're going to read on because it's not going to be long before the guests arrive. I don't know what the timescale here is. It all seems to be effectively set at the same location, with because Demosthenes remains on throughout. But we might call this Unit 2 or Scene 2 if we so desired, as Demosthenes lets forth his lamentation, his complaint, his predicament as we go forward.
Where ebbs and flows of painful grief in sily ship did toss of late my ghost, now misbelief defines mine endless loss. In thraldom's thaw I rule the roost, in flux of blissless woe. A pillar or a propping post my pleasure I forgo. Yet though my fancy naught can veil, naught trickling tears do show, but when that wilful cares assail, I catch the overthrow. Therefore, since nothing is so dure but labour can attain, as poems do my breast assure, I mind to take the pain. And this I know, he is unmeet that will not taste the sour to be auguster of the sweet in moment of an hour.
Around about here, the entrance of Science, Chastity, and Sapience.
Dear spouse, what senseless rage doth bind thy wits in such a maze, or else what fogs of misty mind do cause thee thus to gaze?
Dear dame, whose virtues manifold do penetrate the sky, to view thy glistering eyes of gold, no man so glad as I, as science wants, embrace with stretched arms thy dear, and then he will define the case of this his heavy chair.
As science is bound to yield by right unto her friendly lord, and therefore see with all my might to this I do accord. Disclose, therefore, thy secrets all. Take time, while time may be, for Phoebus mean doth nigh hand call, provision for to see.
Provision that needs must I wail to think upon the same, for all my senses do me fail when dainties you do name. Where shall I find a dainty dish? Where shall I any buy? For dainties none of flesh or fish in all the world I spy.
Great store and plenteous plenty is contained everywhere. Rejoice, therefore, we will not miss. Approach Dame Wisdom near.
O blissful nymph, O lamp of trust, O glittering diamond bright, in whom I hope and ever must, the perfect lantern light, I thank thee thrice, and 10 times thrice I grate thee evermore, that wisdom thine through thy device had salved my present sore.
Where science knits a perfect knot, there sapience taketh place, and chasted life devoid of spot doth govern all the race. The sincere path, the rule of life by me prescribed is, the comfort true of man or wife, the endless state of bliss. But briefly show what grievous sore doth pester in thy mind, that transingly still more and more no assistance thou dost find.
Consider jewels precious, dear. My purpose and intent is to convive, attend, and hear the Muses with assent. And Kate's delicious to provide, I think it very fit, but more I seek, the more as wide, the mark I cannot hit.
Learn well and mark, print in thy mind what Juvenal doth write. By friendship true, which rare I find is negrad swan to sight. And this examples do approve. Yet one I will declare, as principle somewhat to move thy clogged breast with care. In friendship fraud is, this you know, for Pompey was a friend, and fraud gave Caesar such a blow that friendship had no end. For rattling speech with great disdain did frame such sore debate, that whereas love was wont to reign, ensued deadly hate. With roaring rage the cannons rent, and martial feats to try, betwixt them both they did convent in twinkling of an eye. Here Pompey led his valiant host, here marched he amain, there valiant Caesar seemed to boast himself with all his train. Here Pompey gave the onset free, him Caesar did withstand. Here Julius was constrained to flee himself with all his band. Pompeius followed for a space, and then did back retire, reporting that a boy to chase was last he did desire. And Pompey thought he had the best, and doubted not at all. Then Caesar, as a saucy guest for bloody war did call, his ensign boldly to display he pressed with spear and shield, bestowing in a comely ray his army in the field, of haughty mind, of courage stout, of stomach stiff and bold, by whom his soldiers had no doubt the conquest for to hold. When word came to Pompeius' ear how every case did stand, with lively hope devoid of fear betook his charge in hand. As manly as Bellerophon, fierce Caesar's might to try, a knight install Armigeron, on him to live or die. The trumpets sounded out full shrill, the onset was begun. No word was there but slay and kill from morn till gleed of sun. Pompeius' feet began to fail, his knees to earth did bend. Yet valiantly he did not quail, but forward bid to tend, declaring that the ground did quake, friendly his manhood to salute, and questing them to take the words he did impute. The soldiers, greedy of their prey, set all at 6 and 7, and fought so cruel that same day the strokes did sound to heaven. The viewers of this dreadful fight compared it to be co-equal to the clipsed sight that in the air we see. But fickle fortune changed at last by turning of her wheel Pompeius' state, that now aghast compelled he was to reel, to him whom once he did restore, exiled from his reign, that now with scepter in his thore he bare the sway again. This prince, as soon as he did see Pompeius once his friend, for friendship his did straight decree of him to make an end. But first, in courteous sort and skill, he friendly did him greet, and for to cloak his spiteful will, he met him in the street. Then, feasting him with roast meat free, he beat him with the spit, and sent him forth most Judasly, as he supposed fit, to show him pleasure to his pain, as it did well appear, for on the water he was slain, which murthering did not fear, straight presented for a gift to Caesar Pompeius' head. Thus fickle fortune drive the drift that change of choice did lead. Here friendship fleeted by disdain, for Pompey proved true, which for his trustiness full plain bade fading life adieu. And whom he counted least his foe, and for his chiefest friend, by willful hap it chanced so, did kill him in the end. And Ovid saith, if riches flow and honor thou obtain, so long the wind with thee will blow and friends to thee remain. But when the day is overcast with clouds from fortune's throne, then will false friends from thee flee fast and leave thee all alone. Therefore a dainty dish it is a trusty wight to find, which in a tempest will not miss to prove to thee full kind. True Lodwick sleeps in tomb of stone, his carcass wrapped in lead, and Alexander true is gone, subject to earthly bed. Now counterfeits which friendly bear two faces in one hood, with cloaks dissembling do appear to suck our friendly blood. Instead of love, their hatred grows where truth should take a place. Their sweltering waves and scourges flow of spiteful fortune's face. The strongest oak is seldom sure and soonest overthrown. The friend which friendly did endure, a last away is blown. The brother pareth for to gloze his brother to beguile, and friends are changed off to foes within a little while. This, therefore, for because I know and likewise plainly see thy banquet thin, I will bestow this dainty dish on thee, that seek abroad and seldom find a trusty friend indeed, to whom thou mayest declare thy mind when time requireth need.
Of dainties all I must consent this dainty for to be, for friendship's bow is seldom bent, the proof we daily see. I thank thee, Sapience, from the heart, if it lie in my lot, thy gentleness, which heals my smart, shall never be forgot.
And I do muse, what diligence as children do bestow their parents for to recompense with honor that they owe. For duty due is fled away, and humbleness is gone, and true obedience at this day is colder than the stone. Unbridled youth hath no delight Dame Virtue to embrace, but still endeavor with their might her branches to deface. Go view abroad in every coast, and seem a child to train in godly life, and all is lost within a year or twain. As ploughmen rude they do prepare King Nero's seed to sow, whose devilish fancy had the care his mother's womb to know, and trained her even as the sheep are trained to their bane, who falling in a slumbering sleep with bloody knife was slain. For Nero slit her secret womb to see if he could spy the tender cell or chantry tomb where he was wont to lie. Such small regard had he unto his tender mother's breast, that beastly nature made him do the thing she doubted least. Even like I say at present stint, the world is never other, so that the children's breast as flint is stony to the mother. For when the parents taking pain at last do wax full old, the children wish to have them slain, that they might have their gold. Now plain deceit hath chose a seat, now falsehood rules the land. Now love is cold, now children threat their parents to withstand. How many buds of human seed, how many sons remain, that will about their affairs proceed to cause their father's gain? Nay, every man is fully bent his proper chests to fill, so that they care not with assent if that their father spill. Where spring the branches of the tree, where Isaac was the root? Where shall you find a simile to set by him his foot? If any answer in this case, then nusquam he must say, for well I know that Phoebus' face doth foster none today. For pliant was he at a beck, and ready at a call to take a faggot on his neck to sacrifice withal. And when as Abraham did declare how Isaac needs must die, most willingly he did prepare, and would not him deny, but patiently he took the cross and kneeled on his knee, believing that this mortal loss was but a fond decree. What children now would pleased be, if this you should request? Or who would yield so quietly to grant to your behest? They be not born, nor live by bread throughout the world I see, that covet rather to be dead than leave this worldly glee. Then further to the whole effect, and search the pithy style, and tell me, if you do respect, what news within a while. He was obedient, insomuch his parents did him show the doctrine pure of scriptures such, whereby the Lord we know. They framed his steps to virtue's trace. They learned him how to knit the perfect web of heavenly grace. They ruled him with a bit. They made him to suppress desire. His tongue they sought to tame, because of little sparks of fire proceedeth forth a flame. They kept with rod of wisdom's school his childhood in such awe, that carnal blindness waxed cool, so well he knew the law. They did discharge their duties right, they let him not to stray, but caused him with an humble sprite to wander day by day. His oaths were nay, his swearing yea, adherent to the word. His dealing was from craft full free, as scriptures do accord.
Why then, by this, you seem to prove faultless the child to be.
I'm
Not
just going to pause there before we switch over to science. Just to give, Eric a chance to warm up and Liza a chance to cool down. Liza, you're immediately leaping in.
I am wondering if that last speech might be misheaded and might be Science's, because Science certainly picks up as though she has been speaking.
I was wondering the other way around, whether actually Science doesn't say very much and this is Sapience continuing.
I don't know. I think Sapience has given him one dainty, and I think Science may be about to give him another. And I think thematically it works to have one dainty per person. But yeah, that was a very abrupt turn. It's like Caesar and Pompey, friendship, and then, yeah, these kids today, they're full of them and their early modern mobile phones. Why don't they just...
Yes, we have, and it does seem to be continuing. And I'm fairly certain we've got it right in the script, but the script could be wrong, if that makes sense. But we can double check that, whether that's an error in the text or us, if that makes sense. But yes, we've got dainty dish number 1 is a trusty white. Find a friend. Find a friend. That's a dainty dish in itself. Find a friend, truss them up, put them in a slow oven for a good 6 hours, and there's lovely crackling on a trusty white. I don't know if anyone's had any of that. That's not what they're saying. Find a friend. Find a trusty friend. Gives lots of historical examples, and then we go into the question of having a child who's willing to obey the behests of their elders, as the nice, cheerful example of Abraham and Isaac. That nice, not traumatic story from the Bible at all. Obey your parents type gig seems to be what that's going for. I could be wrong there. Alexandra.
I don't know if it is. I mean, yes, friendship is the theme initially, but the description is therefore a dainty dish. It is a trusty white to find. So I think it might be more about find a person that is worthy of trust, or that is trusting. I'm not entirely sure, which then gets brought back in a trusty friend indeed. But then the next kind of part of the argument, which is the diligence that children to bestow their parents for to recompense, if that doesn't prove to be a different dainty next, then it could still fall under a trusty person. Right, so trusty in the sense of, like all these examples of friendship, and also let me give you all these other examples of obedience, sort of upward in rank, and so on.
Other thoughts before we move on? We are rattling towards the end of this roller coaster ride. Eric.
Yeah, I was surprised that this doesn't turn into like theology type stuff. Like, yeah, just like, hey, where the music gone? We're talking about the sort of Christian universe or something. I mean, obviously, all the writing is kind of in that context, I guess. But it just made me think of all the interludes that we've done, like the disobedient child, the Mundus et Infants, and all that stuff, which was fun. But yeah, and like nice wanton, all that stuff, which you can find on our YouTube channel or maybe the Patreon, or both.
On the podcast. I mean, I
yes.
think there is a point. I mean, in a sense, we've gone to historical examples with Pompey, etc., and Caesar. And in a sense, as far as the writer will be concerned, Abraham and Isaac are also historical figures. So to a sense, there isn't a disconnect per se, because people have, do try to connect all these people as real people, and it's the external framing device which is questionable within this universe, not the other way around, if that makes sense. And it could all still be a fever dream, and he's just lying hallucinating on his bed, and Sosia has just taken the needles away and is just going to clean up after them. Alexandra.
I should like to revise my earlier point, because Demosthenes says, "Of dainties all I must consent this dainty for to be, for friendship's bow is seldom bent," the proof we daily see. So whatever he's been told, what he takes is friendship as being the thing to obtain. So you were right. Also, I want to point out that there are vampires in this. There is a Lodowick who sleeps in tombs of stone, his carcass wrapped in lead. Which is all very fascinating. And two things we haven't addressed, which I just want to mention so that they exist on the video, are in the chat. We've been having an entire back and forth conversation about what even is the difference between sapience and science, in a linguistic sense. And also a thing we haven't addressed is there are these side notes in Latin that occasionally appear within the text, and we haven't been reading them, but they clearly mark the points where in English there is and this guy says blah 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 in English verse, and Ovid saith, if riches flow and honor to obtain, do this and that, and in the side note it's in Latin. So it's quoting this specifically and clarifying it, which I think is quite nice of whoever put this script together, to sort of be like, and the original was that.
Yes, we have these little glosses. It's like when we had mentioning for Phoebus mean, and there's a side note of say Merides or noon, basically, and it's so there are these little clarifying things throughout there, and occasionally there is a question occasionally with the speech prefixes precisely where they match the text, because they're not always as neatly placed as they could be. So occasionally there's some drift as to where the speeches start. I think we've got them right, but we could be wrong. And it's entirely possible, actually, to confuse science and sapience in terms of the way we did it. So we might have to go back and double check which of these speeches is science and which of these is sapience, or make a decision ourselves. It would make sense that sapience has finished their point, then science makes a point, and then in a moment I'm sure Chastity will make a point, but that might not be the case, and it may be fine. Anyway, we did sort of, in a sense, we paused mid-thought because Demosthenes asked a question or made a statement about that this seemed to prove faultless as the child to be. So there's but science, potentially question mark, responds to this point thusly.
Not so, but fancy did me move, both faults to let thee see. For if the colt might seem to range and never to be broken, the bit and bridle would be strange. This is a certain token. And therefore, since that every man is faulty, think no less, but that the child do what he can is but a sinful guess. Yet if the wound were ne'er so sore, a salve is to be found, which, though it fester more and more, at last will make it sound. But whereas sufferance seems to reign for all for a little ease, there straight ensueth grievous pain, the former grief to peace. As proof by this we have in hand thy fancy to suffice, where parents will not understand their children's wicked guise, but if they once begin to grow in ripeness of their sin, though they their wicked haunt do know, they maintain them therein. That ripe, soon rotten when they be, then fadeth duty due, so that their folly, as ye see, doth cause themselves to rue. And therefore should they put inure the wise man's saying mild, so long as breath doth life procure, let chastisement rule the child. For duty slips, a good cause why, the parents make and mar, so that this virtue certainly must needs be absent far. Thus, what by tutors fondness blind, and nature of the sprig, the humble branches stark I find, unpliant is the twig. Therefore, this dainty for a dish of right thou mayst prepare, for which a man may often with, but is reported rare. As much to say, obedience flame, and inward heat is cold, so that an humble child by name no man can once behold. For fancy leads their thoughts astray, and wilful will is bent, the righteous children for to play, with prodigal assent. That is, as long as any note of virtue doth remain, they lash and lavish all afloat till it be gone again. The path that Joseph walked in is not for them to walk. For why? Their virtues very thin are faded to the stalk. Abromnicio pleads their case with sanguine sword in hand, a justice died in commonplace, all goodness to withstand. Thus pilgrim-like their race they run to no good point at all, but as the wax against the sun doth melt away, they fall. That seldom sure or not at all an humble child to find, a man may travail where he shall. Let this content thy mind, and serve this for a second mess, which I to thee assign, because thou dost pretend as guest to feast the muses nine.
What joy is unto my breast aspire, what gladness now doth reign! Her speech hath set my heart on fire, her talk hath rid my pain. A dainty dish it is indeed, a service hard to see, whereas the child doth render meed with lowly bended knee unto his ancient father's head, where silver hairs do grow, for children now are better fed than taught full well I know. Doth not experience flat define the nurse constrained to bow unto her cradle oftentime, which right doth not allow? Yes, right is wrong, and wrong is right. Unkindness' cloak is kind. The light is dark, and darkness light. The eyes that see be blind. Thus dainties twain I have, but yet the third is to be sought, which, if that I could seem to get, full soon it should be bought.
Neither can gold attain the same, but serious pain and toil, nor princely money bear the name, without a fervent broil. For coin herein doth naught prevail, I mean in wisdom's law, the scaling of the walls to assail, where science keeps the door. And therefore, since as authors old, when they prepare to write, their learned tables do unfold, whereby they should indite, not otherwise by course, I will, if thou will with heed attend, endeavour with a simple skill, the third dish for to end. I maze and muse, in what degree, as trusty wives do stand, for well I spy and plainly see few faithful in the land. They love a while, the proverb old to them may be replied, their love so hot is quickly cold, it cannot be denied. Where resteth faithful Sarah now? Where is Rebecca pure? whose bended knees full oft did bow her husband's grief to cure? Where is Joachim's faithful wife, Susanna called by name, of whom Dame Virtue's branches rife did work a worthy fame? First, Sarah's purpose and intent to God was to accord, and secondly, with one assent to please her faithful lord. Rebecca sought by chary charge her husband's quiet ease, and wrought all means for to enlarge a solve his ire to please. Susanna's care was firmly cast, her chaste vow to keep, despising every carnal blast that lulled the soul asleep. For when the elders did conspire their pleasure blind to have, by filthy lust of fleshly fire, which made them so to rave, that approaching nigh her bathing place, unto her they did run, with flattering style and crafty face their purpose to have done. The beams of grace did so inspire her worthy chasted mind, that crackling sparks of fond desire her soul could never blind. She rather choosed for to die, to please their sinful lust, than to consent most torvidly to break her promise just. Lo, here the fruit of faithful state. Lo, here both trust and hope. Lo, here Dame Virtue with her mate does seem to tend her scope. Doth present time the like declare. Are women now so true, unto their faith to have a care, and eke their duty due? Nay, faith is fled, nay, faith is dead, nay, faith is laid full low. For every wight with urgent spite gives faith the overthrow. Now Venus doth her banquets make with, and lust with painted book, proceeds herein the pains to take, her darlings' names to look. Then first approacheth to his hand the married female knot, and nigh to her there seems to stand the maiden's crazed pot, so that as guider of this ray the harlot Pride is chief, and Venus as rector stay doth aid them with relief. Then Cupid with his bended bow dischargeth forth his dart upon those vessels weak and low that taketh Venus' part. Thus wide do range in woeful sort, thus snaring they do jar, in leaving of their Thalem sport to hunt the fox afar. I will not say that all their might doth give their bodies free, in leaving of the perfect light of Venus' court to be. For I their odours so do smell, that needs I must suppose their filthy shape with her to dwell, that Virtue doth repose. Of wedlock many break the band, that linked is so fast. Shall we, say they, as trusty stand to one while life doth last? Not so. And why? Because that shame is chased from their mind, that shameless, like their chasted name, they dim and muzzle blind. Or at the least, if Venus net their fancy cannot move, they do endeavour for to get a salve for their behove. That is the Paeans proud to play, the victory to obtain, by which they hope another day their husbands to disdain. With chafing broil and chiding checks, they do endeavour still to clog and yoke their martyrs' necks, that they might have their will. For one word, twain, for 2 words, 3, they practice and intend, and all is for the mastery to purchase in the end. Thus, as the old cock oft doth crow, the cockerel learns apace, with notes full shrill his voice to show in every meeting place. For damsels deck their hearts with pride, and vaunt themselves so high, that all their care on every side is Virtue to deny. They make a jibe and jesting stock at such as do despise their wicked facts, they grin and mock at every good devise. For if their chasted life bear sway till 20 years be past, or 21 and a day, that number is the last. For banquets then of Venus kind they covet to attain, then Virgin's lamp is struck and blind, and Chastity is slain. Thus wives be masters, as ye see, and masters made the foot. So as before, for victory to strive it is no boot. Here, as the rest hath given to thee a dainty dish, so I, to please thy fainting fantasy, the third will not deny, that seek to find a trusty wife, and travail thine is lost. For many fragile be full rife, but faithful few can boast.
A trusty friend, an humble child, a faithful wife, say ye? I do adjure by Mary mild these very dainty be. Now when it please therefore to hear, the junkets I suppose doth fittest for this royal cheer, the same I will disclose. First gaze I much where justice true doth plead the poor man's case, and right is rendered, whereas due should seem to have a place. For money makes them tread awry, and turns the cat in pan that should pronounce the equity to every kind of man. Then secondly, much more I muse where craftsmen live upright, their balance equally to use to every simple wight. And last of all, where shall we spy the servants to fulfill the seeds of service faithfully to please their master's will? I doubt them all. Yet may they be, when as the sea doth flame, or else I think assuredly few such do bear a name. Thus now I judge myself well sped, therefore I heartily pray that you would take the pains to lead Dame Science home today, and I, the Muses, every one, will bid unto this feast, but bound to you all three alone, I covet for my guest.
I, wisdom, science by the palm will guide unto the place, and sacred chasted life so calm shall not absent her face. Make haste, therefore, and stay not long, with speed return again. Request of Pallas, us among to dine, to take the pain.
And exit nymphs.
Doubt not. What as your zealous will requesteth for to have, to accomplish, I'll endeavour still, and Triton's friendship crave. O withering grass, O fragile shade, O slippery tower high, whose honour as the day doth fade in twinkling of an eye, where naught's but vanity doth dwell, and beams of virtue fly, a lurking den, a hollow cell complete with misery, repent, with sobbing sighs lament, you froward devilish art, lest suddenly that you be shent of limbo taking part, from which repentance may you bring a wholesome salve and guide, to rest with that eternal King, whose glory doth not glide. Well, time doth wish me to prepare to seek to Muses nine, to gust and taste of dainties rare, which you have heard us sign. And in mean season I commend you to the shepherd true, in whom salvation without end doth rest. And thus, adieu.
And off they go to the cheapest meal ever. I mean, it's great. We got the 9 muses coming over, and what do we get for them? Concepts. Slightly problematic concepts in place there, but for the period, very conventional. Oh, so conventional. So much of this stuff. So yeah, it's I quite like the idea that Demosthenes has just gone on a bender, and this is all in his mind. And what a look into the early modern mind this is as well. This is it's telling us all about all these conventional things that we can get on board with, like having a trustworthy friend is a rare thing. To have someone who's genuinely got your back, especially in a world of power. And then it gets a bit weird, and I mean, not weird per se, because again, early modern, it's all very conventional, but it's not something that's gonna make anyone be desperately dancing around the aisles today. Liza.
But it is kind of weird in places, even for its era.
Oh yeah, I mean, the form of it is totally weird. Yes.
The form of it dates. I mean, we have dream visions from the medieval era, from the early medieval era, and it actually starts out as a pretty conventional dream vision. A lot of them describe, rich surroundings encrusted with gems and pearls and gold, and for some reason, scantily clad nymphs or goddesses come up a lot. Go
I
figure.
can't imagine why. And I mean, you know, it's possible this isn't written by a man, but you know what? I think it's possibly written by a man. I can't.
In
Yeah.
the worst possible interpretation, I'm the thing I don't want this to be is that some dude wrote it for his child's wedding, his son or his daughter, and it's like, can you conceive of anything worse?
But it does feel like that's what it's for. It has to be said.
The rebellion, for the bit on the rebellion of children against parents, which is attributed to Sapience in the manuscript, but might really be Science's speech. That the really graphic bit about Nero and poor Agrippina is I mean, that's weird. Even for this era, talking about children being disobedient, there are far less god-awful things to talk about than Nero.
Yeah, and it does get it's really leaning into all of the slightly dodgy things that Nero might have been getting up to with his mother, as well as the whole murdering mother is about, you know. And it's, you know, the point is, of course, it's rare to have an obedient child, so therefore it is a rare dainty. It is rare to have someone who is chaste and
but they could have said that in a pleasanter way.
Yeah, I know, or certainly a less weird way. I mean, it's distinctly strange stuff. But yeah, Eric.
I was just gonna say that, like, usually we've learned from previous interludes in like this era, especially as in morality plays and all that stuff, that there's no motivator like fear. It's like, yeah, don't have kids, or I don't know, I think that, yeah, I don't know if that was the point. Maybe just don't have disobedient kids. I don't know anymore.
Well, say the point is that what they're pointing out is, you know, the world is full of sinners these days. It's very rare to find good people who do all the right things. So stuff. Alexandra.
But the interesting thing is, it's not I imagine it may have had an intention to motivate the audience towards something, but it sounds more like it's kind of going almost preaching to the choir about aren't these things rare to find nowadays? You know, back in my time. And also, it's definitely not attempting to motivate the character to do a thing. It's not about you should be a trusty friend, you should be a humble child, you should be a faithful husband. It's about, wouldn't it be nice to have these things? You know, in your position of privilege and power. Yeah, I think it would be nice. And can I also add 3 more things that I've considered rare, is for your servants to do their bloody job, and also for justice to be rightly rendered as it is due. And then I can't remember what the third one is. I don't think craft, yes, and for you know, for the plumbers not to overcharge you and also lie about how long the thing is going to take, you know.
Yes.
It's kind of it's really very, it feels to me, especially once now we've got to the end, it seems to be coming from a very specific place. You know, not only is it possibly written by a man, but it's possibly written by somebody of a particular class and position in society.
Yeah, because
and to those people as well.
Yeah, I mean, it's such. I mean, it's all starting with that dream sort of fantasy stuff that it starts with, of, you know, which you know, Liza's made the point, you know, it's found, this kind of thing is found in medieval literature, and it survives today, and thanks to, you know, people like Tolkien and you know, other people writing similar sort of stuff about go into the woods and meet fairies and they'll feed you and strange things will happen. So yeah, but going in a very different direction. So weirdly, it's sort of, that part of it feels very approachable in a strange way, whereas when it gets more morally later on, it's sort of going, yeah. Because we know all these examples. We've dramatized these examples. You know, we've looked at Abraham and Isaac. We have looked at Susanna. You know, in a weird way, I could imagine fitting this within a season of work because it references other works. It's such a weird curiosity. I mean, it doesn't have legs in any meaningful sense except as a sort of a strange history lesson. It's an odd beast, isn't it? It's that thing of I don't know what it is in the way that I do most other things because it is so obscure and strange. It interests me, strangely. Eric.
Sorry, I'm just amused at the way you say it interests me. Which I mean, yeah, it is interesting. What I find interesting is that like it's done the thing that we've seen in so many pastorals, like probably after this, where we've got like I don't know, like in Queen's Arcadia or by Samuel Daniel and stuff, where you've got like old people complaining about the new generation, and it's like that doesn't really fit in a pastoral sort of comedy type thing. We did just have like sort of the old men from the Muppets just sitting on the sidelines in that one, which was kind of commenting on how bad the young people are being, which it just I don't know why they do this.
Okay, I'll give you another way of looking at this. So, because in a sense, it's not Demosthenes who's talking about, things ain't what they used to be. It's the actual personification of these things are saying these things. So maybe it's more a sort of small gods Pratchett sort of thing, where the gods are saying we're not being worshipped in the right way enough, kind of logic. Chastity's going, there isn't enough of me about that there used to be, and wouldn't it be nice if that happened more often? Maybe we could encourage that through some piece of theatrical propaganda. Alexandra.
So just to correlate if we do give science the entirety of the child's argument, then just to correlate who is speaking about what. So it is wisdom to find a good friend, not to be one, to find one. It is knowledge, I guess, or how else would we interpret science? Intelligence. It's clever to have a child that is respectful, and finally it is chaste to have a chaste wife, a faithful wife. Okay, great. There are a few, we've mentioned that there are a few sort of references to what we would consider to be biblical stories, but people at the time would have considered to be historical characters. And what I wanted to point out is there's very little overt bang you over the head with Christian morality, which we find in a lot of other stuff, or I remember in a lot of other stuff of this nature. So that might be why we're finding it kind of strange, is that it seems to be, even though it sort of hints towards the end about rest with the eternal king and I commend you the shepherd. They're very oblique references, so clearly this is not a performance that is done in a religious context. Maybe it's not for a wedding, which would have a very large Christian component, unless it's for a non-Christian wedding. But then what is it for that it feels the need to dance around the most common manner of kind of anchoring morality that they had at the time?
Well, I think we have had texts, and we will have more texts going forward, which will be, broadly speaking, set in a classical universe, but will also have reference to the Christian universe, so it's a setting place. So Fulgence and Lucrece, which does a similar sort of level of work. It's not a morality play in the same way. It's not religious in the same way. It's a secular work. But it doesn't mean that it isn't drawing on morals and occasional mentions to the God show. It's not the God show in that sense. And it's sort of looking ahead to a degree.
That's what I mean.
The things that Lily will be interested in. Sorry, Alexandra.
That's what I mean. It's the fact that this is so kind of intentionally and I don't know what the word is, like effortful is not it, but it's clearly very carefully trying to be not the God show. Why? How? That's it. Really fascinating.
Eric.
I was just gonna say maybe it's because it's implied, so it's kind of like everyone would know these stories, but then like kind of there's no reason to. I mean, then again, they did do the banging of the head a lot, so I don't know, pun intended or not.
Yeah, tell that to John Bale.
Yeah.
I remember.
Yeah, who's just about still with us, I think. Is he dead yet? I don't think he's dead yet. He's sort of not writing because the kind of stuff he wants to write is not in fashion. I mean, that's the other thing. We are at the point where explicit religious tub thumping is not a good thing. The Queen has, and it's been something that's been said for the previous two monarchs as well, that don't talk about religion in explicit terms. And as Elizabeth's reign goes on, they really put the screw on the kind of or morality play that you used to have. So you get these neoclassical crossovers like this. So it might be that's explicitly what's going on there. Apart from saying thank you God at the end, they're not. There's a deliberate attempt to talk about Christian values without utilising the older moral framework. Maybe. Okay, well, in a weird way, this is very doable. It's only needs 5 actors. It's short. That's logistically the kind of stuff that I like. And as a strange curiosity, it interests me. I don't think it's going to set anybody's world afire, but I found it read a lot better than I thought it was going to. I thought that was going to be a lot more uncomfortable. I mean, it's not comfortable, but a lot more uncomfortable in practice. When I was reading it, I was going, oh God, when we get to Chastity, kill me now. And it's not good. But I think if presented in a way of saying, this is a kind of exercise in this kind of thing, I won't feel too horrendously awful about it. But maybe that's just me. Alexandra.
You just pointed out something about the way in which it's written, and I think we haven't talked about that enough, if at all, is that actually it's really well written in a construction of verse sense, right? You've got all these internal rhymes, and you've got all of this kind of, it doesn't, we don't particularly like the way that the arguments are formulated, but from a literary standpoint, from a just construct. Eric, as not a poet, would you perhaps kind of enlighten us more on this? Right? It's sort of, it's not necessarily effective for us, but it's not written badly. On the contrary.
No, it is slightly trapped, I think, within its own verse structure. I mean, I think it becomes a bit repetitious and after a while. But that isn't to say it's badly done. It's just I think it's the nature of the form gets a bit difficult to deal with. When you've got that many rhymes dancing around, it can get a bit samey. Anyway, I'm going to go around for final thoughts. Emma, you have been silent in commentary so far. Any final thoughts about this curious Banquet of Dainties?
Yeah, I've just been trying to get my head around it, to be honest. It's so odd, but like you say, it is really well written. I enjoyed the rhythm and the words as I was reading it. Even if I didn't particularly enjoy Chastity's speech, it was very much the same thing. Just wives these days, bad. But no, it is in a weird way a quite enjoyable piece. But I do agree with the fact that if you were to perform it, how and why, and also back then, kind of what was it for as well? So many questions, but yeah. I've enjoyed myself.
But most of them are why?
Why?
Why? Yeah. Eric, do you have an answer to why? Sorry, that's not fair. There is no answer to why. Any final thoughts?
I'm just glad the author is dead. No, wait, that's wrong. Yeah.
Be kind. Be kind.
No, yeah. It's interesting. The rhyming is just as you noticed, it was hard not to go full just like I think because it rhymes, it drives you forward, and it's hard not to overlook the words at times. So all the stuff about Nero, you could have easily, because of the rhyme scheme, A, whatever. It kind of makes you not really think about what you're saying in a way. It's like, yes, this awful thing happened to a man. It's almost like a limerick kind of thing, without like inconsequential kind of way. I don't know. That's what it reminded me of anyway. And yeah, I don't know what you would do with this aside from like, look, the person wrote a thing. It's very interesting. We don't know what it was for, or who it was for, or why. But ta-da.
Yeah. Alexandra, any final thoughts?
Yeah, do we know that this was a text written for performance and that it was performed?
Nope, we know nothing about it apart from its title, its printing, and this text. This is all we got.
Yeah, because if it's not written for performance, then it's very sort of reminiscent of, I think, Liza, you mentioned this, the kind of earlier, as in several centuries earlier, literature of the had a brilliant dream and essentially the theme of chivalry, and then learn some lessons, the end. And I can't think of a singular example right now. Doesn't Chaucer write something for John of Gaunt that has that structure? But it's
Book of the Duchess.
Yeah, but it's a massively popular thing for a period of time that probably by now has long since ended. So maybe if we looked at it from that perspective, maybe that's what it's for. It certainly makes a lot more sense as a thing to see on page than to me it makes more sense as that than if I were to listen to it. So maybe it's even as a modern piece, maybe that's its better use. I don't know, because as a performance, I am confused as to why, which I think we've established.
Yeah, but I mean, this isn't a slam dunk, but it does have the occasional stage directions, saying exit and things. That's not a slam dunk as to because people did write out things in the form of plays, even if they were never designed for performance. So that's not a slam dunk in any stretch of the imagination. Yes, this could be entirely designed to be read, and that's it. It may have no performative tradition at all. It feels weirdly performable, but again, I don't know whether we can go that way. Who put Dainties ASMR in the chat? I have been looking for an ASMR type text. I'm not sure that maybe the first speech might be doable that way, but I'm not sure that you could do the whole thing as that.
So maybe it might have been written to be read out, as like a chamber piece or something. Maybe.
Who knows? Nobody knows. Eric?
I just remembered, you remember when we were reading an Satire of Three Estates, where we had that awesome, like, sort of pre-play advert thing that was, which was basically awesome. And then we got the play, which was, the play wasn't bad. It was a different type of thing completely, like false advertising. I feel like the first scene is what, like, sort of the false advertising for the rest of the text.
It starts well, and it doesn't quite deliver, does it? It's like you're going, there were nymphs, and there was a bathing, and I got married, and what do I get for the food? And that's it. And then they come on and deliver stuff.
Yeah.
That's a shame.
Yeah, that's what it reminded me of. Except, and Satire of Three Estates was much longer and much more interesting in some respects.
Oh yes, a much bigger and much more dynamic, and frankly much ruder show. As there's many f-bombs drop in Satire of the Three Estates. So many f-bombs,
And people drowning in rivers for that we didn't know were there.
Yeah, there's lots
as far as I remember.
Yeah, earliest use in dramatic English of the f-bomb. If you want the c-bomb, then you have to go to the Castle of Perseverance, which features that there. So. Other swearing is available. I'm not sure which the earliest piss is. I'm fairly certain there's quite an early piss and shit, and there's a lot of them about shit. That's all, way back. That's from the very beginning, dawn of time stuff. Anyway, that's not really the purpose of this episode at all. Anyway, Liza, any final thoughts?
Well, during the sharp turn into moralizing that the second half of this text takes, I found myself really missing Sosia and hoping that that Sosia would come back. We really, at the end especially, we really need Sosia's input. And, writing down on the, takeout menu, it's like, okay, one faithful wife, one obedient child. Would you like seaweed with that? So, yeah. You know what I really hope happened? I really hope that What's-His-Face wrote this, hoping that it would be performed at a banquet before royalty and would make his name as a poet and moralizer, and that everyone would say how great he was. And I hope that whoever was organizing the entertainments just read it and was like, nope. And that was why he had to print it, in order to memorialize his thinky thoughts for future generations. It would give me great pleasure if this were a rejected entertainment that ended up as a printed screed instead.
His thinky thoughts.
Thinky thoughts. That's an academic term.
Oh, of course. Sorry, it's a bit too highbrow for me. Yeah, I mean, it's a weird time, the 1560s. We haven't done the 1560s for ages in any detail. We've done some translations of Seneca recently. So around about now, we've got a whole bunch of Senecas being translated. We've got Supposes. We've got Appius and Virginia. We've got Jocasta. We've got a version of Gismund and Tancred and Gismunda. But it's also the same time as we've got things like King Darius, which is just, what the hell's that? And the Orestes play, and just plays are just all over the place. So in a weird way, this makes perfect sense for 1566. It's absolutely right to fit within there. And Peddler's Prophecy, yes. Buy your magic stones here. That's a play I want to really go back to because I still want to know what it is. And that seems to be basically what you spend the whole time in the 1560s going, what is this? Why? And so, yeah, it feels fitting that our last of this period is this Banquet of Dainties. So, any other final thoughts before I close the session? Oh, Alexandra.
I would just like to read out one of these side sections in Latin. I really hope this isn't what you've chosen for your closing words. It is Ares comparibus facili me congregator, alias similes habent labra lactucas, which is translated as, like with like gathers easily, or their lips are like their lettuce. I don't know why that's relevant, but it's there, and I just need it to be memorialized.
I don't know whether that's an accurate translation or whether there's a Google Translate issue happened there. I don't know what's going on there. I'm not getting involved on that one. On that note, thanks to all the wonderful readers for all their wonderful reading. Thank you very much, everyone, and goodbye, filthy lust of fleshly fire.